Here's Chris Maher, host of FFM93 Live.
All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back here to episode 19 of FFM93 Live. Lots to talk about. It's very unfortunate with the way that the past handful of weeks here has gone for the Flyers, but for this episode tonight, Bill Matz from Broad Street Hockey and WIP will be joining me. Just coming up in a couple of minutes here. The Flyers have lost 10 in a row for the third time in 2 years. Not fun. Really not fun with the way that this has actually been going for this team. And I guess in the sense of, the overall process and how this has really been going for the Flyers. And obviously you lose guys and with injury and all that stuff. And it's very unfortunate, I guess you could say, because last night's game, for example, just tweeting this out now. Last night's game, for example, it looks like the Flyers are going to win that one, and unfortunately they don't. But here he is now, Bill Matz from Broad Street Hockey and WIP. Bill, how are you? Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
Hey, how's it going today, Chris?
Good. How are you?
Well, that's good. Doing very well. It's crazy time right now with the Flyers, but we got an Eagles game to look forward to, right? So that's always nice. But yeah,
Right.
it's been a little ridiculous with this team losing 10 in a row and just trying to find itself through all these injuries and all the drama.
Right. No, for sure. And again, I think just to kind of get right into it, I mean, you're looking at this team, and I guess everybody had a different opinion on what was, I guess, going to happen for this year. I think everybody kind of knew that this team wasn't going to be in a playoff spot or realistically any good for most of the year. I mean, especially myself, I try to, I guess, keep it more of I honestly went into it with no expectation, because the last handful of years I went into it and I was like, this team, they could be better, they could be good, whatever. Especially from 2020, 21, the shortened COVID year, I was like, all right, this is our year. Let's kind of get back to this. The year after that, which was last season, it's like, all right, that was just a one-off. Now let's get into it. And they were really bad. And then this year, it's like, well, now what? So, I guess my question is, Bill, for you, did you try to go into this year with any sort of expectation, or was it just like, it is what it is, and let's see how it goes, how it plays out?
Yeah, my expectation was they'd be pretty bad. I kind of was, maybe I was hoping they'd be one of the worst teams in the league, so that maybe, we could end up with the top 3, top 5, maybe the top draft pick in this upcoming draft that's supposed to be very good with Connor Bedard at the top. I didn't think they'd be this bad, especially after the way they started. I wasn't confused or anything by what happened in the first 10 or so games. It was very obvious. They weren't playing well, but Carter Hart, when you have a .950 save percentage, you typically win.
Right.
And that's basically what was happening. Now he's just reverted to pretty good instead of the best. And so they're losing every night. I guess my expectations were kind of wait and see, because I wasn't sure what Tortorella would be able to get out of them. He's got a reputation for coaching teams to get, maybe above what their ceiling is, at least in the short term. And I thought that was a possibility. And now I think we're starting to see, especially with the injuries, what this team really is.
No, for sure. And that's the thing. I mean, look, the injuries are one thing, and especially the last handful of years, and really in all of Chuck Fletcher's tenure, since coming over in 2018-19, there's been a lot of injuries. And this isn't just like, one or two guys. This is mainly your key players, from Ellis to Couturier to Atkinson to Allison to Law, and I could go on. And there's more I'm not talking about. Look, to me, it's pretty obvious. The Flyers are always going to die on the, well, we were injured type grave, and they're just always going to just fall onto that. And I get it, and for Torts, it's different, because this is his first year. And he basically said when he came here, I'm going to push all that to the side. But if you're looking at this right now and you're looking at this roster, you have so many guys out of position. I mean, for example, you have Patrick Brown playing your third line some nights. Nick Delorier was their third line left winger last night. Zach McEwen's been in your top 6 for most of the season.
He's been one of your best players.
Yeah.
I love Zach McEwen, but if that's the case, you're probably really bad.
Right. Right. And that's the unfortunate thing with this is, and again, McEwen for me, first of all, he has that like great and that type of heart. And I know some people don't want to hear that stuff because they're a struggling team, but you have to mention it. Honestly, I think for me and Bill, I guess my question is, what happens now? I mean, at this point, you're on another 10-game losing streak. I don't really know how tickets and all of that stuff is going to continue to go. The attendance hasn't been, I don't think, horrible. There were some games where it looked pretty good. I know Friday's game against Pittsburgh, there was definitely some people there. Obviously, Black Friday helped. It was funny. I actually covered the game Monday night against Calgary for Hockey Fights Cancer. There's a lot of people at that, especially at that game. But again, just my question is, what happens now? I mean, in your eyes,
I have no idea what Chuck Fletcher's plan is, because it's pretty clear he didn't come into the season with one. He didn't have one in the off season. Like you can say, oh no, they're trying to rebuild. No, I'm sorry. A rebuilding team doesn't re-sign Rasmus Ristolainen. Like, oh, he was worth a first round pick. Other teams are willing to give one up. So that means you could have gotten one for him then, huh? Right?
Like,
and if he's worth a first
maybe
round
one
pick,
or two at that point.
Yeah, like what's Travis Sanheim worth? Like, and no, he's here for the next decade now. So
right.
I
just hit like he's Cale Makar.
Yeah, I have no idea what the urgency was to sign Travis Sanheim. Like, he needs to be a part of this thing. I like Sanheim. I think he's an okay player. He's a nice little second pair defenseman. Why do they get 8 years at like the absolute max amount of money they could possibly be worth? I have no idea. So it's very clear he has no plan. And so it's hard for me to say, okay, well, this is what they're going to do from here. If it's me, this has to be all about evaluation. Like Cam York needs to be here yesterday. When Bobby Brink comes up, when he's healthy, obviously you get a better look at him. But, if there's ever a question, well, do we play this veteran or maybe we give this kid a look? It has to be all about getting looks at guys who might be able to be a part of this thing in a few years when they're good again. Obviously, they don't have the top-end talent. That's the number one thing they're missing. Hopefully, they're able to get it through the draft because you had a chance to go out and buy some, and you said, "Nah, we're good. We want Ristolainen and Tony DeAngelo instead." So perhaps they're able to draft some, but there's gonna be guys who can be pieces on this team, second, third, fourth liners. Figure out who they are. Owen Tippett, John Tortorella. We all saw the video of him yelling at Owen Tippett on the bench in the preseason. Show me who you are. Are you a grinder? Are you a scorer? What type of player are you? And he seems like he's one of the guys who started to figure it out. Some of the injured guys, Scott Lawton, it seems like he can be part of he can be a role player and part of a leadership core, but he needs to get back, obviously. And all the rest of the players, Cam Atkinson, Sean Couturier, James Van Riemsdyk. I mean, you're not going to be able to move Couturier's contract, but anything not nailed down, you need to be trying real hard to move because you're not competing for the next couple years. So if you have to eat some salary on a Cam Atkinson contract, just do it because that cap space is pointless anyway.
Right. No, for sure. And again, I mean, I feel like a lot of what this roster is at the moment is trying to figure out who's going to be here for the long haul. And again, I honestly think you hit the nail on the head because to me, I feel like a lot of the at least some of the RFAs and some of the UFAs too, a lot of these guys can be, trade deadline, type of things last year, like how they got, Braun and Broussard last year. I mean, guys like McEwen, Kiefer Bellows, like I don't really see many of these guys really staying here for really any length of time after this season. Kind of going back to what you said on Cam York, I felt like he should have been here probably when the season started. I don't really understand why Nick Seeler is still playing, and it's not a knock on Seeler. Lucas Sedlak is another one. Why did you even pick him up? I mean, he's not going to be here after this year. I think that's pretty clear.
Like the Sedlak one, at least I can kind of understand because you just need bodies at a certain point. Like
Right.
now,
Right.
it's the fault of the GM and the front office that the AHL team isn't stocked with those sorts of guys who can just
Mhm.
come up. But
In
they've
like
had
2 or
some
3
injuries
years,
down
they
there
have
too.
guys
Yeah,
that can actually like make the team, like Ellie Dinoyer, Zadie Wisdom, like guys like that. But like it's not anytime right now. I mean, the only other guy that was
yeah.
called up from Lehigh Valley was Owie Lixel for a game because they lost Owen Tippett in the home opener, and that was it. And Lixel went right back down.
That's all we've seen. Yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
it's on the organization that they don't have those guys stocked. They have had some injuries down there too. And those
Mhm.
have been concerns over the last few years. So like Sedlak picking them up, okay, someone has to play. Like you're not going to go with 10 forwards, I guess. But
Right.
just the complete lack of depth in this organization, the complete lack of a plan is killing them. You see it
Yeah.
now. They've lost 10 in a row with no answers.
Mhm. No, for sure. And that's the thing. I mean, look, I feel like if we were to compare the losing streaks, for me, I don't think the losses have been like as bad as last year. But like for like example, like last night's game, you played a good 40 minutes. Okay. You're going up against a team that has struggled in recent years. Well, the year before that, I should say. In the Islanders, they've been a good third period team. And in 22 seconds, you just forget to play hockey and the game's over. And this isn't the first time this has happened. There's been different things in each game where it's either led to a goal or something like that. I mean, at least for me, like when I notice, like Bill, I'm not sure if you know this, but I do game recap videos, and I mention this in every video that like there's always that like mind fart that comes, and they just forget how to play hockey for maybe 30 seconds. And an example is the second game in Columbus a couple weeks ago, that the 5-4 overtime loss. Just a change, and then the opening goal of that game is every player goes off the ice for a change and Columbus comes down and scores. And it's like last night you have again turnovers. Every goal against the Penguins on Black Friday was either a turnover, a missed stick in front, and this is the stuff that John Tortorella was brought in here to change. It's not as much of like the off ice stuff, and that stuff is different. I think he has changed that. And it's not, obviously you see it in the pictures, the videos, all that stuff, the working out and all that different stuff of what they've been doing, being the most conditioned team. But on ice, they're still having the same issues they have been the last 2 years.
Yeah, they're fundamentally, it's almost impressive. These guys are in the NHL without like, we've heard the stories of them having to practice line changes, and no coaches. Every coach is like, I've never had to do such a thing at this level. Like this is something we should have down. And as you pointed, it continues to be a problem. Like 5 years later, they're just so fundamentally flawed. It's almost shocking. Some of these guys are. Like, what could they be if they knew how to play? It's like a bunch of Jordan Mailatas. Like, hey, look at this guy. Imagine if he played football like his whole life. You get that impression from some of these dudes. Like, man, they're pretty good. If they actually knew what they were doing, they'd be decent. It's very frustrating, this team. I think for the most part, they are harder to play against in the idea that they're not rolling over and dying the way they have the last couple of years. And there are a lot of times, they dump the puck in, the other team breaks out, puck carrier gets his head up. Yeah, he's facing 5 Flyer sweaters. He's able to get by them because they're not very good players. But just in that idea of being hard to play against, you have to beat 5 guys.
Right.
They are.
Has been much better.
Yeah, they have a little bit more of that, but it's still... At this point, tell me a team that could live without like their 1C, their best couple of wingers. Like they're at a point now where it's just difficult to compete with how few established NHL guys they have. But the problems remain the same. Like they'd have a better record, but would we be impressed with them if all these dudes were healthy? No, they'd be a bubble playoff team.
Right, exactly. And that's honestly, that's not where you want to be. I mean, if you're looking at it now and it's like, and it's like, well, if we're good, we make the playoffs. Okay. But like, what does making the playoffs really do? I mean, unless they go on some like crazy, like Phillies World Series run type thing, just like the Phillies just did, like, and that's rare. Like, and that's why it happens so often.
It's insanely rare. And like that Phillies team, the reason people were so frustrated with them, the reason they fired Joe Girardi is because they were underperforming.
Right.
And then they kind of lived up to expectations. They had a bunch of really good players, the reigning MVP, the best catcher in baseball. Like they had a bunch of dudes who were good, and it just wasn't all coming together. This team doesn't have that. It seems unless Carter Hart just goes on a Dominic Hasek run, there's absolutely no chance of them making any sort of, I mean, at this point, they're one of the worst teams in the league, but just say they hold their heads above water. They're a bubble playoff team the way they played the first couple of weeks of the season. Unless he's just one of the best goalies ever, they're not going anywhere, even if they get to the playoffs. And now, you say bubble is the last place you want to be, especially in a year where unless you're a good team, you don't want to make being a bubble playoff team means everyone tricked you into beating them. It means you screwed up. If you miss the playoffs by a point or you're the last wild card, you screwed up this season because you had a chance to be at the top of the lottery and everyone else was just smarter than you.
Right. Right, exactly. And that's the thing. It's like if we stink, okay, it's probably another top 5 pick. And honestly, I'm fine with that in a so-called generational draft with Bedard and Michkov and Fantilli and all these guys. It's like, okay, what's the harm? I mean, now that's where the other part of me kind of comes in, and it's like, well, they can't develop a guy for anything. And quite frankly, the drafting, I don't think has been an issue. I think they've actually hit on a lot of these guys. A lot of it's been unlucky with injury because they like, and again, if you're talking about luck, I think they have some of the crappiest injury luck I have ever seen.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, and again, if you're looking at it like, example, guys like Pascal LeBurge, German Rubtsov, these guys were supposed to be legit players. Nolan Patrick. I mean, again,
guys who not just didn't live up to expectations, straight up aren't playing. They're not in the league, or they're borderline guy. They're the definition of are they even busts? It's not even like they're bad. They can't play.
Right, and that's the thing. Like Rubtsov, I don't even know if he's playing. I know he's obviously in the Florida system because he was in the Giroux trade. But just like you said, Nolan Patrick isn't playing a game this year.
His career might be over.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the unfortunate part of it is you have some guys that have been legit players and guys like Provorov and connecting the guys that have, obviously Carter Hart's been one and Sanheim is another. But honestly, if you're looking at it, they have really struggled to develop guys. And, I feel like, if they were to get a Connor Bedard, it's funny, me and my buddies, we always joke, they would make him into Scott Laughton. Because
I think a player like that, I don't think you can screw it up. But
no, I know. Yeah.
But imagine what they would build around him. It would be a team of Scott Lawtons around him. It would be him, hopefully Cutter Gauthier, and then I don't know, because listen, they had Claude Giroux for a decade. What did they give him? They never once said, let's get him a guy who can shoot. One of the best setup men of all time. And they were like, oh no, Scott Hartnell, that's fine. As the best goal scorer we gave him. That's the top of the line.
They gave him Jaromir Jagr for one season.
They gave him 37-year-old Jagr. They gave him, they had Giroux and Voracek in their prime. Point of game players, all-stars. Here's Michael Raffle. Here you go. Here's Michael Raffle. It's embarrassing the way they failed to build the team around those guys. Now, okay, we get Connor Bedard, and then what? Connor McDavid ain't winning any cups with Edmonton, and we're worse.
And that's the thing. It's I don't think Bedard is going to single-handedly make us go from all the way here, all the way up here. It'll help, yeah. I mean, obviously that's obvious. But again, I mean, it's very clear that you have to actually have a legit team in this league.
Yeah.
And four sets of lines, 3 sets of D pairs, and a really good goalie. And that's the thing. I mean, I feel like for the most part, they haven't had that. And honestly, the more I watch them and the more I see all these young guys play and guys like Frost, guys like Bellows, guys like Tippett, I think what's pretty clear to me is the only reason some of these guys are getting a legit shot is because they have no one else. And it took Tortorella to put Morgan Frost, and I harped on this. I wrote over a 3,000-word article on this, on the usage of Frost, where he is, the underlying numbers, the whole thing. And I was very critical of, like, you aren't giving this guy a fair shot, because last year you actually saw improvement in his game. He had opportunity. He took advantage of it. Now, when I wrote that article, he was still playing third line, but when they lost Lawton and Konechny and all these other guys, then it was like, well, now he's up here. Unfortunately, since that, and since I wrote that, and since that all those guys have been out, Frost really hasn't done anything. I don't think he's really taken advantage of it. And that's part of my issue, is you have these guys and you have these legit players. And I feel like part of it was their confidence in all of that went down because they weren't getting a legit shot after last season, when you saw Frost and Cates and Tippett and all those other guys. Outside of Cates and Tippett, who I genuinely think the organization thinks has to work out because he was in, the trade for one of the best franchise players ever. I feel like part of it, they've really been the only guys that have genuinely done anything. And that's the frustrating part is, and again, I guess my question is, where do you kind of see their mix of young players? Because you have guys like Frost, you have guys like Farabee, who I personally don't think has really played that well. But again, obviously the question is, where do you kind of see their mix of guys, moving forward?
Yeah, Farabee, I think, has been a disappointment. For the first couple of years of his career, I was tracking like his goals and points a game numbers. Like they matched David Pastrnak almost perfectly. Now, I think mostly what we're seeing from him right now is hopefully he's working his way back from this neck surgery, from the disc replacement surgery that he had. It's right. He's the third guy in the league to ever get it, and hopefully he's able to work his way back. I think Jack Eichel looked okay last year, and this year he's looking a lot better now that he's had some time. But outside of them, I mean, maybe Cutter Gauthier is something. It looks like it. He's killing it at Boston. He's a freshman, scoring at a pretty high pace. He's a big guy. He's already got like a man's body, so that's good. But man, outside of someone they just drafted at 5 and a dude who has been a top 6 forward for them for a couple of years already now, I don't really see a ton in their young players. I mean, Morgan Frost, they can give him all the opportunity in the world. He's got to take advantage of it at some point. He just has to produce. Give me a week, like Owen Tippett for a couple of weeks produced. And I go, okay, look, he's taking advantage of what they've given him. Let's see more. Morgan Frost, I know he's been hurt. I know it always hasn't been advantageous. What's he ever done? The first 2 games he played in his career, he looked awesome. Yeah, he had that one crazy goal, a few points, and it was like, oh, this guy's going to be something. And he's really shown them nothing. I mean, their young players are just guys. It's just a bunch of dudes who maybe can fill out a third and fourth line for you.
Right, exactly. And that's where the frustration comes in, is they have these players and you have these guys that you want to see grow and see play. And I don't even think, coming out and saying, we're going to rebuild and this and that is always the best thing. Probably would have been a lot easier than hearing, the whole blank check thing and all that stuff. But, you actually want to see these guys produce, and really not many of them have. If they are, it's been a lot of again, kind of like you said, like on and off type thing. And, and one of the biggest issues that we haven't even hinted at yet is the special teams. For the first 2 weeks of the season, the power play and the penalty kill actually looked pretty good. I mean, the power play was legitimately moving the puck. They were actually getting the puck in the zone, which is unbelievable to say for a National Hockey League team, but that's kind of where we were last year. I don't even know where to start. Where do you kind of see the special teams as of right now? Because I thought like the power play would be a work in progress, because listen, we saw the videos from camp. People covered it. We heard what was going on. They had days where they didn't touch pucks. It was just all about conditioning. And as a fan, like as mad at the team as I am, I'm like, good, like kill them, like skate them till everyone throws up. Awesome. But
something you sacrifice there is like they're never going to work on the power play if like they haven't focused on like if they haven't broken the pucks out yet. When do they get to the power play? You know, and it actually started out like you said, not bad, and it's kind of regressed since then. That's another thing I think you can kind of chalk up to injuries because you have. Like it's a time for your best players to pad their stats. That's what the power play is. Like that's how a guy goes from
just take
70 points.
Right.
Like, that's how you go from 70 points to 95 points. It's a huge part of your best players getting time, with one fewer opponent on the ice. They don't have anyone who can take advantage of that at this point. Like, who is the guy you're like, oh, well, you got to look out for him. Like, it's not Tony DeAngelo is a nice player. He can add to your power play. He doesn't have a bomb from the point. He's not Shea Weber up there.
He's very good at getting shots through, but you lost Van Riemsdyk in your net front guy.
Yeah,
so
like
that's the problem.
There's no Wayne Simmons to make that screen or to get that deflection. It's not happening. Put home the rebound. They don't have anyone of that caliber. So like the special teams I think that's the best example of where they're just missing the top end talent, whether it's the guys that they have that are injured or just their complete lack of high end players to begin with.
Right, exactly, and that's and it just, even on both sides, power play, penalty kill, the penalty kill's been similar personnel. It's just I don't even know how to explain it, but for me, like clogging the middle was something I noticed for the first like 10, 15 games. I shouldn't even say 15. But maybe first 10, 12. And since then, it's been wide open. I mean, it literally looks like 95 at 2:00 in the morning. We were
seeing like every game in the beginning of the season, like they're giving up 37 shots. And then you look at the scoring chances, be like, you can live with that. All right. It's not the worst. Like Carter Hart's seeing the puck, making the save. It makes sense. And it has opened up. They have kind of gotten away from that a little bit. It's very weird the way it's regressing. Maybe it's frustration. Maybe it's just guys trying to do too much. I don't know, but it's they got a lot of problems.
Right.
Like the power play's bad, the penalty kill's bad, and they're no good at 5-on-5. So I don't know how you win. I don't know how you get out of this losing streak.
I don't either. And just going off of that, their next 5 games, the Islanders again, who again you played a good 40 minutes against, and honestly, if you're looking at that in general, and it's like, well, they did this right. You can't always just say that because it's like, and that's where I disagreed with Tortorella last night, where it's like, well, we played a good first 40 minutes. You just lost 10 games in a row. Like, you can't always say, well, we did this right. Well, it's like, okay, I get that. But at some point, you have to actually win the game for that to be, I guess, a credible thing. And Tony DeAngelo said it, we might have played, I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically said, like, we might have played a good 40 minutes, but we didn't win the game. And that's kind of where the problem is, too. But again, going off what you said,
good 40 minutes is something when, like, you play a bad first and then recover. And it's like, well, you know what? We showed up for 40 minutes and we got the win. Like, no, you're just losing. You don't have enough. That's like the Claude Giroux team's always notorious for the bad starts. But those were teams like you had Giroux and Voracek in their prime. You had Braden Shen. You had Wayne Simmons. You had Kimmo Timonen, Shane Gostisbehere, all these players that you could come back. This team can't afford, like you said, a 2-minute span, a 22-second span where they just forget how to play. They can't afford that because they have no chance at erasing a deficit. They're not good enough to make mistakes.
No, and they're going to, because you have so many guys, Patrick Brown, Zach McEwen, all these other players playing second, third line when they really should be playing fourth line. I mean, Nick Deslauriers,
they lose when they play well.
Right.
They lose when they play well. When you screw up, you're never going to have a chance.
Right. And again, it falls back onto the same conversation of Carter Hart can't do everything, because that's the problem, is when you have a legit, really good goaltender. And the one thing that I am going to bring up that I think a lot of people don't even want to stomach is his contract ends in 2 years. If they are still as bad as they are, I don't know if he's going to stay here. Like, I really don't know.
How much, like, depending on where the team is, why do you even want to invest in a goalie? Like, it might be a mutual thing. Like, I want Carter Hart to play here forever. I want him to have a 20-year career and be awesome.
Right.
It might not be in the cards. Like, if this offseason Johnny Gaudreau didn't fit your timeline. How does 26-year-old, 25-year-old Carter Hart fit your timeline in 2 years?
In
Like,
2
if you
years.
don't have this thing figured
Yeah.
out in 2 years,
Right,
which
exactly.
why would they?
Right. And at that point, you're hoping that it's a completely different overhaul of management, staff, and everything else. Because, look, the cap is supposed to go up, and that could, maybe help it a little bit because they're basically like they're at 48 of 50 contracts. I know on Cap Friendly it says 50 of 50, but there's two that have to get taken off. It's Fedotov and John Randall Avon. Those two haven't been updated yet, but if you're looking at it, they are like slammed to the wall in cap space. And again, we talked about it earlier, from the Couturier contract to giving Sanheim that deal and Ristolainen, who makes $5 million and has basically been playing your third pair for the whole year. I don't know how you get out of some of these, because if you think about this and you look at Fletcher, right? He came in here in 18-19 in December. We had a bunch of cap space. We had legit players that were in at least still in a window that was kind of fading out of winning, in Giroux and Voracek and Simmons and all them other guys, even though Simmons was kind of moved out that season. You still had Gostisbehere and Provorov and everybody else. You had the number one prospect pool in the league. You had a bunch of cap space. You had a good fan base at the time that was, obviously frustrated, but still loyal, still went to every game. Even when the Flyers were struggling, they were still it was basically sell out every night. We were always good in attendance. And now what do you have? You had the only thing that this team markets is Gritty and Tortorella. There isn't a single player that is actually marketed.
No, your mascot and your senior citizen coach. Like, I like Tortorella. Steph Driver and I sat down with him, had a conversation. It was really good. Loved everything he said. I think he's going to do a lot for returning some accountability to this organization, not just on the ice, but everyone above him, because he's got no problem. Like you said, hey, this guy you just gave a 5-year contract to, he stinks. I'm playing him third line minutes because he does nothing. Like, I think that's huge, just to point out, like, to anyone in management who's, on the side of Chuck Fletcher, like, okay, well, do you respect him or John Tortorella more? Because Tortorella is telling you all these guys he's given these long-term deals to can't play, or definitely not to the level that he's paying them to do so. So I think he's huge for that. But, like, how much longer is this guy going to want to coach? Like, like, what?
I mean, especially with this right now, it's like every game he comes in and he's like, we're just going to keep teaching. Like, I just feel like he's given up already. And it's not like a discredit of him or what he's doing. It's like, and again, look, I've been pretty critical of him at times with again, usage of young guys and stuff like that. But for the most part, I generally like what he does. And I like Shaw. And I also really like Rocky Thompson in the sense of, like, they play harder. It's a better game to watch, if that makes sense, even though they're still on the wrong side of the scoreboard at most nights. Like, they've lost 10 in a row, but it doesn't feel like last year where it was like everybody had the paper bags. And that's what I put on the thumbnail, is like, that's basically where we're going at. Because if you're looking at this, their next 5 games, which I mentioned, I hinted at a little earlier. You have the Islanders again. You have Tampa Bay, New Jersey, who's 18-4, Colorado, and Washington. Now, you've proven that you can at least play pretty well against Washington in a really close game. Again, you can't afford any mistakes. They had a mistake late in the third. The Islanders, a mistake for 22 seconds, and you lose the game 5-2. This is what we're talking about.
Is it just looking at the schedule? What would that be? So 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Like, they win again, after a 16-game losing streak in Arizona? Like, is that what we're looking at here?
Right, exactly.
I have no idea how they get out of this thing. Like you say, Tortorella, maybe he just came to the realization early on, like, we're going to stink. So that's like, we're going to keep teaching, is what he has to tell himself, because that's what this season's about. If they're ever going to salvage anything out of this year, it's teaching guys the right way to play some freaking hockey. So moving forward, they're not the worst team we've watched ever.
Right. No, for sure. And that's the thing. And you also have to keep the fan base happy. I don't really know if that's really salvageable at this point, but you have to at least try to make amends towards making it a little bit better. But Bill, I think we're closing in on time. Thanks so much for doing this. Always appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have do you and Broad Street Hockey got anything coming up soon?
Yeah, we do the show once a week. We'll probably record on, I'm just looking at the schedule now, Tuesday or Wednesday of this week. So you can look wherever you find podcasts. Just search Broad Street Hockey for that. The post games have been spotty to this point in the year, but they will be back pretty regularly pretty soon. So thanks for everyone who's been asking about those. I miss doing them. It's just been a ridiculous schedule for me lately, so they'll be back, and it's all the usual Broad Street Hockey stuff. Kelly does the pre-games, checking out the competition, all of that and more. Flyperbole, all on the Broad Street Hockey podcast feed.
Cool, awesome. Thanks, Bill. I appreciate it.
Take it easy.
You too. All right, so that was Bill Matz from Broad Street Hockey WIP. Always good talking to Bill. Again, we got a lot of comments here in the chat. I wanted to get to some of these. Jeffrey, what's up? How are you? I get the feeling that a lot of the team does not seem to work good with Torts. It's definitely possible. I mean, for most of what the season has been, certain guys I don't really think have really meshed well. I think Kevin Hayes is one of them. Hayes yesterday, I think two assists yesterday for Hayes. He leads the team in points, but is he really playing well? I don't really know. That's kind of where I'm at, is like, we have a team here and you have a bunch of these guys. Like, I don't really think Tortorella was the right hire. And I was in on it in the beginning, but it's like, now I'm like, I don't really know, because you want to actually like develop guys, and you have a sense of like the team where it's like, are they really developing? Because how can you really develop if you keep losing? And that's where I'm at, is like, what else is there really to develop? I mean, certain guys haven't taken advantage of this. Guys like Frost, I don't really think Cates has. Defensively, he's been good. I think Tippett's been good defensively at times. But it's like, how much can you really expect from this type of roster? Mr. Twister says, are they in the top 3 as far as slowest teams in the league? It's definitely possible. I mean, I think most of the issues that they have had has been, I think, more of the legit way that they play. I think the slowness can come into areas when like they aren't actually forechecking. And forechecking obviously is a huge part of it. And it's obviously a huge part of their system. But most of it, I don't really think they've been doing that much. Like, I feel like it's been off the last handful of games. Jeffrey says, I've watched most of the games on Direct TV, NHL Center Ice, and they seem to be getting worse. They're not developing. I don't really think so at all. Carter H. Sorry, I missed this earlier. It was on here. Yeah, here it is right here from 7:15. I meant to get to it. My apologies. I did see it. I wanted to bring it up. The common question being asked this week is, who was worse, Hextall or Fletcher? My thoughts. God, I mean, if you're looking at it in this sense, it's like Fletcher. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, the franchise never got to this point, and they wouldn't have under Hextall. They had a legit plan, and they basically were going to do a rebuild, and then just like got bored of it, and then just stopped. And that was the problem. Backyards, when you still have chances for autograph jersey, I do. I will be mentioning them and towards the end of the show, but I'll mention them now as well. The Joel Farabee autographed replica military jersey for the Flyers fan club. The tickets, these are the tickets here. You can message me on Twitter, Instagram, whatever, doesn't matter. They are, again, it's a drawing for a autographed replica military Flyers jersey signed by Joel Farabee. It is a Farabee jersey. They're $5 each for a ticket, or 3 for $10. The drawing is December 20th, 2022. So if anybody wants those, just send me a message and you can get them as well. Mr. Twizzler, and yeah, this is going off last night's game. I know Barzal is a good player, but there wasn't one young player who could keep up with him. I don't really think there was many Flyers that could keep up with him. And I, this is last night, and this is also a couple years ago, in the playoffs in the bubble when the Flyers took on the Islanders. It was like, well, we couldn't stop them, and that was kind of the problem. Excuse me. Philly goes, can anyone answer what has Risto brought to the table? Not much. Really not much. Again, if anybody wants to call in, call 267-939-1216 or send a text message to the line as well. I could read that as well. Mr. Twizzler says, I tend to quote Office Space when talking about Risto. What exactly would you say that you do here? Well, and that's the problem is like you have this player that's locked up for a handful of years and he's playing third pair. I know he did play last night and the game before that with Sanheim, and they actually look like I didn't think they were that bad last night. I thought they did a really good job of exiting the zone and moving the puck. God, I mean, I really don't know what they do. Is Ristolainen in the deadline move? Is he an in-season move? Is it an off-season type of thing? I mean, you spent a roster player in Robert Hagg, a first-round pick, I believe a third-round pick to move to actually acquire him. And realistically, a second-round pick and Shane Gostisbehere to pick him up as well because you had to move out all that money to pick him up. It's very tough. I mean, you're getting to the point now where it's like, again, a lot of this roster, and I talked about this with Bill, and look, I hate to be this negative, but it's just I really don't see this any other way. You have this whole roster here. You have Bellows, Cates. I don't think you're really getting rid of. We got a call here coming in from Tristan. Oh.
Chris,
1 sec, buddy.
Okay.
You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Go ahead.
So, that game was so pitiful yesterday.
It was very bad. And it wasn't, again, right? I mean, it wasn't like any sort of it wasn't really anything they didn't do for a period. It was just that one shift.
Like, yesterday. Well, let's talk about the Pittsburgh game. And as you know, I get it. I know you're getting on Hayes.
Mm.
You all right?
Yeah, I mean, again, call ended. I think we'll see if he calls back. But yeah, I mean, I think for Hayes, I think most of it has just been he's been okay. I mean, he leads their team in points. Again, we'll see if Tristan calls back there, but here he is now. Go ahead, buddy. I lost you.
Sorry, my mom was talking to me for a minute.
You're fine.
So yeah, the Pittsburgh game was terrible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know, and that's the thing. I was about to get into it, and he called back. I mean, I think I've been critical of Hayes. I think in the sense of like I haven't really loved his game defensively. I think there's been some areas where he can improve. Not even really improve in the sense like he has to still develop. It's just I don't think he's played to the sense to his role, and that's part of what I was mentioning with Bill is, you have a guy and he's playing out of position, and you know that, and that's the problem is you have a lot of these guys that were and still are playing out of position, not being in the right spot, and that's what happens. You can't afford to make a mistake, and unfortunately, they're having too many of them.
I mean, that's one. I did get on you about the Kennedy defense. Oh, trust me, last year he will. Wow. I get it, but one thing about Kennedy, I know he's battling an injury right now.
Mm-hmm.
My friend Tyramai told me last year, and he says he doesn't play no defense, and he's. Do you really know that?
Kennedy? I mean, I don't really think I don't think he's horrible defensively. I think a couple years ago I used to really be like, he's struggled defensively. I think in recent years he's been much better. I think there's been a lot of him improving. I mean, if he didn't get injured, he was on like a 90-point pace for this season. I mean, he was easily the and again, you've seen that they have really struggled with losing him, and that's it's unfortunately they've just been too injured to really even compete to the level that they really want to.
I mean, yes, it seems like that you gotta have 4 or 3 players. I know one thing, Farabee needs to step up because I know that guy's battle an injury right now, and it's. I mean, I know Farabee's a good player, but it's even at that. I know last year he had a little rough year, and actually it does things when we lost Jerome.
No, for sure, and that's the thing. I mean, I think for Farabee, he's coming off of that surgery. I don't think he's played at his best, but there's more to give. I think that's been the case with a lot of guys. I mean, they haven't played to their legit standard and to the way that I think that they can play because, you see all these teams like Pittsburgh is one of the biggest examples. Mike Sullivan gets a lot out of their guys, and when Crosby goes down, when Malkin goes down, when Letang goes down, all those guys, they are able to,
play better.
Right, exactly, and they're still able to play, and I think there was a certain level that the Flyers could get to. I think they got to it for the first 40 minutes of the game last night against the Islanders, and that was it. They weren't really able to actually make any sort of 60-minute effort out of it, and that's been part of the issue too. But buddy, thanks for calling in.
I mean that them 2 games are so pitiful. I know one thing Tuesday. I hope it's not 11 in a row on us.
Yeah, I know, and that's the thing, right? I think a lot of it has been, most of it has been they haven't been able to move. I haven't really been able to just win a game, and that's been the problem. Is like how long is this going to go? And that's kind of where me and Bill were.
I know that.
Yeah, we'll see, buddy. But thanks for calling in.
One more thing. What do you think about Noah Cates right now?
He's been okay. I think there's been a lot of I think Cates has been he's been okay. I think defensively
he's still in the top 6, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, he's been okay. I think there's still more to give on offense.
All right. My Seattle Kraken is about to come on soon.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you.
Yeah, I am a Kraken fan as also.
Cool. All right, buddy. I'll talk to you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. It's Tristan. He's a beauty. Yeah. So I mean, again, I think a lot of it has just been some of the same stuff that we kind of were mentioning, and Carter H here, he says, I say Hextall. Hextall size mistakes beat Fletcher in my opinion. Hextall was rebuilding and never did. He had a few good pitches, but reached on Rubtsov and O'Brien. Well, and that's part of the problem. Is Rubtsov would have been a good player if he didn't get injured, and O'Brien can still be a legit player. It's just nobody talks about him. Also battle injury as well. But again, I think that's it for tonight. Again, thanks everybody so much. Again, as you see here at the bottom, SeatGeek, you use code FlyersFanMania for $20 off your order. That's an order of $50 or more, so that's when that'll come off for SeatGeek. Always real good stuff. Use code, again, all capital letters, FlyersFanMania. Again, subscriber count, we're getting there. Almost close to 2K. We've been on the road to 2K for a while now. We're at 1,452. So hit that subscribe button if you have not already. Again, always do appreciate the support. Again, stay tuned for some more updates. Check me out on Twitter it's @_ Chris Maher with a capital C and a capital M this week. Check me out there for more updates for the podcast coming up this week. Thanks everybody. Remember to check out the fan club if you want any of the stuff for the the Joel Farabee raffle tickets. You can check those out. Just message me if you want to purchase one. And the Christmas party is coming up. That's at Wells Fargo Center on December 6th. And I believe that is I think that's a Wednesday. It might be a Wednesday night. It's at Wells Fargo Center at 7:00. Let me just make sure that is the right. It is a Tuesday. My mistake. So Tuesday, December 6th. Thanks everybody. Mr. Twitzer, Philly Ghost, Tristan who called in, Carter H, Jeffrey, everybody else. Thank you to Bill Matz for coming on the show. Thanks everybody so much. Hope to see you all next week. Thanks guys.